Hello! In this episode, we're going to be talking about the pretty new isekai show, Trapped in a Dating Sim. In a twist on the formula, the main character this time is reincarnated as the background character in a dating sim made for women. The story centers around a regular guy named Leon, who is blackmailed into completing an otome game by his sister. Leon hates the game because of the awful plot, which is a mashup of fantasy and sci-fi elements, and the poor balance causes him to spend real money to progress. After spending 3 full days playing the game, Leon hits 100% and decides to head to the convenience store. Unfortunately, on the way he collapses and falls down a flight of stairs. Leon wakes up as a young child. He goes home, where it turns out he is Leon Fo Bartfor, son of a baron. That evening, Leon's memories return. He realizes that he's actually in the world of the otome game, as a background NPC, or MOB. He takes notes of everything he can remember about the game and spends the next 10 years training, as he knows what happens in the game will eventually happen in this world. Finally, the year that the game is set in arrives. Leon decides that he needs to get into the Love Academy, or he'll be married off to a noble who just wants to send him to war and then live off her survivor's pension. Leon realizes that he can use his knowledge of the game to get the Academy entrance fee. Leon sets off on a quest to go and collect one of the items he paid real-world money for, before the protagonist can discover it during the plot of the game. It turns out that what he's after is a futuristic ship. Unfortunately, this is guarded by a robot that Leon has to fight. The robot tells him that it was designed by a previous race of humans that favor technology over magic. However, this speech gives Leon an opening and he manages to shoot the blade of his sword through the robot's face. He activates the ship, but is dying from his injuries. It turns out that the robot was actually a sentient AI named Luxion. Luxion tells Leon that he's part old human and part new human, before sending Leon to the medbay. 3 months later, Leon returns with a ship overflowing with treasure. This is enough money to improve his island and enter the Academy. Just before entering the Academy, Leon is granted the title of Baron, because of his accomplishments in the 3 months he's been adventuring. When he gets to the Academy, he notices events he remembers from the game, but weirdly, they all feature a girl named Marie, rather than the protagonist of the game, Olivia. Leon notices Olivia being bullied for being a scholarship student rather than a noble, and although he wants to stay far away from the main storyline, he can't help but come to her rescue. Olivia admits that she's struggling to fit in and doesn't know what to do. Leon takes her to meet his sister, who tells Olivia to bribe the most important girl in class and to become one of her friends. This girl happens to be Angelica, the rival from the game and fiancée to the prince, who also attends the Academy. Angelica agrees to stop bullying Olivia and learns of her friendship with Leon. Leon gets wounded during a class and is saved by the prince and his friends. The prince gets too hurt, but Marie heals him. Leon recognizes this as an event from the game, but once again, Marie has replaced Olivia. Olivia heals Leon, but the prince and Angelica get into a public fight that ends with the prince leaving with Marie. Marie is being bullied, and everyone suspects Angelica. This causes Prince Julius to reprimand her. After hearing about this, Leon realizes that the events in the game are now happening out of order, likely due to the change in protagonist. Leon and Olivia hear something, and they find Marie kissing one of Julius's friends behind his back. It turns out that Marie knows that she is in an otome game as well. Leon has suspicions about her and sends Luxion to gather data on her. Angelica confronts Julius publicly and tells him that Marie has been running around with other men. All of Julius's friends and the prince himself declare their love for Marie, which causes Angelica to challenge her to a duel in a rage. Julius and his entourage volunteer to be Marie's champions, but no one steps up for Angelica. Leon remembers that in the game, if Angelica loses this duel, she is exiled and has an awful life, so he steps up as her champion. Luxion confirms that Marie is like Leon, reincarnated into the game. He arrives for the duel, but the prince and his allies have giant armor mechs. Angelica asks Leon to reconsider the duel, but he refuses, and an armor of his own crashes down from the sky. The crowd bursts into laughter. It turns out that Leon's armor is an antique, and nobody expects it to be able to keep up with the brand new model of Julius and his entourage. This is only made worse when Leon tries to equip his weapon, forgetting that he replaced it with a shovel in his last adventure. However, Leon's armor is a lost item called Aragons. Between Leon, Aragons, and Luxion, the first 3 of the prince's cronies are easily defeated. Leon realizes that he might have gone too far in humiliating his opponents, however. During a break, Leon's sister is coerced into planting explosives on his mech by his next opponent. Luxian is aware of this and gives Leon the heads up. During the fight, Jilk is unable to even leave a mark on Arrogans, which causes him to detonate the explosives. This doesn't do anything, since Leon was expecting the explosion. Jilk threatens to kill Leon's family if he doesn't throw the match. Expecting something like this, Leon has Luxian recording the conversation and plays the threat back to Jilk. Jilk realizes there's nothing he can do, and Leon defeats him with one hit from his shovel. Julius comes into the arena, and Leon asks his opinion of Olivia. Julius says that they've never really spoken, so he doesn't have an opinion. The match begins. Leon quickly gets the upper hand in the battle and continues his gloating and humiliating of his opponents, even though this time it is the prince. He admits to Luxian that he's been trying to snap Julius out of his fascination with Marie. When the prince gives an impassioned speech which upsets both Angelica and Olivia, Leon feels like he's gone too far and defeats the prince in the duel. After the match, he tells Olivia that the reason he's been so horrible is because he's playing the villain to become the hero, trying to do what's right while giving the public someone to hate. Meanwhile, Angelica goes to see Julius and finally understands that he will not love her. She decides to stop trying to win his affections and leaves. Leon strikes a deal with Angelica's father, where he will avoid execution and his family will avoid any blame for what happened, but he must give up his barony and leave the academy. Leon is more than happy to do this, but is also asked to take Angelica back to his island so that she can have some time away from the academy. While on the island, Leon becomes friends with Livia and Angie, as they now ask him to call them. The prince and his cronies are all disinherited, so they decide to team up to defeat Leon. Marie is devastated that all the nobles she had been dating no longer have titles or money. Much to his dismay, Leon is actually given a knighthood and has to return to the academy. Everyone in the academy is setting up for the festival. Leon and his friends decide to run a cafe, but it turns out that Julius and his friends have decided to also run a fancier cafe next door. This doesn't stop Team Leon though, and they carry on as planned. Once the festival starts, Livia is out promoting the cafe, but rather than getting anyone to visit, she's just bullied for being a commoner. Eventually, another student, Caller Wayne, comes to speak to her. Just as the cafe opens, Angie is called away. Queen Meline has come to campus and needs a guide. She also wants to give Leon a piece of her mind for how he handled the duel with her son. At the same time, the cafe has a visitor, Stephanie Faux Offray, who only turned up to cause trouble. Leon refuses to stand up to her even though she is behaving terribly. Mylene and Angie turn up and try to put a stop to things, but Stephanie, unaware of who Mylene is, insults her. This sends Leon into a rage. He beats up all of Stephanie's servants. The queen tells Leon that she doesn't approve of his methods, but doesn't blame him for what happened with Julius. Leon proposes to the queen and manages to annoy her, Livia, and Angie in the process. Julius turns up and attacks Leon for proposing to his mother. Mylene demands that Julius introduce her to Marie, who she thinks is a bad influence. Livia introduces Leon to Carla. She begs Leon to help her struggling family. The end of the festival is approaching, and everyone is looking forward to the air bike races. Jilk is the favorite, but in the second-to-last race, he's seriously injured by followers of Clarice, his ex-fiancée. Somehow, Jilk manages to win but can't continue in the final. Marie is angry because she was counting on the prize money and tells Leon that if he doesn't take Jilk's place, things won't be good for Angie because she can't find any other replacements and the executive committee ordered her to. Leon agrees to race but tells Jilk that it will cost him a favor. Before the race, Leon meets Dan, Clarice's main follower. Dan tells him the story of Clarice and Jilk and how Jilk left her by writing a letter. During the race, Stephanie confronts Angie and Livia again. She manages to upset Livia by pointing out that Angie used to hate commoners and Livia runs off. This infuriates Angie, who beats up Stephanie. On the track, Leon is being assaulted by everyone who has lost money on his duels. Luckily, he had Luxian modify his bike before the race, and he uses these to win. He pushed his bike too far though, and it explodes, sending him flying towards the ground. Leon is saved by Dan at the last second. Leon uses his favor with Jilk to have Jilk apologize to Clarice. He then learns about the fallout between Angie and Livia. Carla turns up at Livia's room with Stephanie. It turns out the issue facing the Wayne family is actually made up, and the Sky Pirates had been hired by Stephanie to get rid of the people annoying her at the academy. She forces Livia to go with Leon to try and wipe them both out. At the same time, Leon is preparing for the mission. He already knows Stephanie is behind it and is only going because there is a major item for the protagonist. The holy necklace which Livia needs to access her ultimate form, the Saint. He doesn't plan on bringing Livia with him though, and Luxian mentions that by being overprotective, Leon is preventing her the opportunity to grow as a person. The next day, Leon is ready to go when Carla shows up with Livia and two of Julius's cronies, Brad and Greg. Angie learns what's happened from Stephanie and sets off to meet with the others. When the pirates attack, Brad and Greg don't know what to do. Leon tells them to wait in the ship and quickly defeats the pirates. They get to the land controlled by the Waynes, and Carla is forced to admit to the whole plan, after trying to blame it on Livia. Leon steps in while Livia is trying to defend herself, once again being overprotective. He decides to go after the rest of the pirates since this group didn't have the necklace. Livia falls out with Leon because of the bullying things that Stephanie has been saying to her. She's upset that Leon and Angie treat her more like a pet than a friend. Luxian and Leon are having a chat on the deck of Partner, Leon's airship. Luxian explains that the argument that Leon and Livia had was because Leon hasn't been allowing Livia to develop as a person. The next morning, the main contingent of pirates attack. Brad and Greg beg to be allowed to fight, and Leon lets them. During the battle, the lead pirate lands a blow on Leon that Livia sees. She manages to get onto the deck, but is attacked by the lead pirate. Brad and Greg show up to help her, but neither of them can do much against the lead pirate. Leon notices what's happening and defeats the pirate. He manages to get hold of the necklace that Livia needs to become the Saint. Meanwhile, Marie and her servant are completing a dungeon to try and get hold of another one of the artifacts. Livia heals Brad. When Leon sees this, he decides to distance himself from Livia and Angie and fade back into the background as an MOB. He manages to get evidence linking the pirates to Stephanie and makes a request to get Greg and Brad re-inherited. Stephanie is arrested, and Brad and Greg get Leon promoted in rank. Everyone is excited for a school trip that's coming up. Leon has rigged it so that he will get sent to a location with an item that he wants. On the island, he manages to get the item he's been looking for. But things are still weird between him and the girls. He admits to Luxian that the reason he hadn't gone after the other holy artifacts yet is because he was waiting to get his hands on the battle charm from the island. On their way back to the school, an army of monsters shows up from the Principality of Phanos, led by their princess, Hertrude. The ship the students are on is boarded, and Angie gives herself up as a hostage to save the other students. Leon and Livia are the only two people that protest, but the other students knock them out and lock them up. Hertrude tells Angie that because almost nobody stood up for her, she's going to give the order to attack the students. Chris asks Leon for help in protecting the others, but Leon refuses unless everybody helps. He gives an impassioned speech in front of the other students and eventually gets Deidre Fro Roseblade on board. Since she's the second most influential student after Angie, the others agree as well. Leon heads out to the battle, but Livia stops him and makes him promise he'll bring Angie back. Hertrude begins to play a magic flute. Leon sets off to rescue Angie, while leaving Chris and Deidre in charge of the ship, with the students on it. The battle against the monsters is going well until the Principality starts unloading its cannons against the ship. Realizing she needs to buy Leon some time, Livia manages to unleash one of her saint powers. It creates an unbreakable barrier around the ship and destroys hundreds of monsters. Leon manages to board the enemy's ship and rescues Angie, along with capturing Hertrude and her magic flute. However, the Principality decides to sacrifice the princess and redoubles their attack. Angie manages to tap into her own ability, Fire Lances, and uses them to destroy Leon's enemies. But Livia collapses, having used too much magic power with the barrier. Her and Angie have a tearful reunion, and they become friends again. The ship is hit by a cannon, and Angie is sent overboard. Livia manages to grab her, but a second shot hits the ship. Livia manages to get Angie back on the deck, but goes overboard herself. Leon manages to save Livia with his airbike, and she confronts him about the distance between them. She tells her she should go after one of the protagonist's love interests, but she tells him that she loves him. Leon, Angie, and Livia prepare for the last battle. Partner and Arrogans show up, and it looks like the students will win. But then the Principality unleash their fiercest warrior, the Black Knight. While the students evacuate to Partner, Black Knight makes an appearance and heads straight for Leon. The Black Knight quickly gets the upper hand, as he is far more skilled in combat than Leon, and his sword is the first weapon that Leon has come across that can damage Arrogans. Eventually, the Black Knight manages to completely run Arrogans through with his blade. It turns out that this was part of Leon's plan, and he quickly ejects from Arrogans and holds the Black Knight at gunpoint. Leon spares his life, but takes the sword. He then allows all of the Principality's soldiers to go home. After the battle, he returns to his room, but finds Livia and Angie asleep on his bed. Leon gives Chris all the credit for the battle. Leon, Livia, and Angie are having tea when Leon introduces them to Luxion. Luxion tells them all that Julius and his friends have been scheming against Leon. It turns out that they have built an armor made from the salvageable pieces of their former armors, the ones destroyed by Leon. They challenge him to another duel. Leon accepts and plans to lose on purpose. However, they haven't built the armor very well, and Luxion realizes that it's overheating and will explode, killing Greg, who's piloting it. Greg doesn't believe Leon, leaving Leon no choice but to destroy the armor. Leon is granted a Distinguished Service Medal for his part in the war with the Principality. He's also given a promotion to Viscount due to all of his recent achievements. Marie is infuriated by this, and it turns out that she has managed to acquire the Holy Bracelet. Leon decides that his feelings for Livia and Angie are too strong for him to continue trying to be a background MOB. He decides that no matter how hard life gets, from now on, he's going to do what it takes to be with them. Thanks for watching today's video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already and give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you thought of the show in the comments. Bye!